Hi, Mike. How are you doing?
Hey Nils, nice seeing you again, man. How's things on the West Coast, right?
Yes, West Coast. Things are looking pretty good out here. I'm hearing more and more people getting appointments to get their COVID vaccine shot. So things are looking bright for us. How are things in your neck of the woods?
In Belgium, well, snow the last couple of
Snow?
2 days. Snow, yeah, lots of snow. And the vaccine thing, well, it's not really kicking off, but yeah, that's a different story. It's Belgian government, so we always take things slower, you know that. But enough on practical details on daily life. What are we gonna talk about to the audience here? Because what are we doing here, man? What are we trying to explain?
Yes. What is Unsung Heroes of the Cloud? This is, I'd say, a new series that Mike and I have been talking about for months on ends, and we finally decided to kick it off. And the goal for the two of us is to present you some of those cloud services, primarily Azure services, but they could be open source solutions that, in our opinion, are like the real unsung heroes of the cloud. And I believe, Mike, you've got a first example for us here today.
Yeah, it's it's so obvious that we're working with Azure in a very resource way. We have resources and resource groups, but we never have a full attention of the underlying mechanisms of it. And one of the things that I'm going to show you today, it's really stupid, but it can be such a lifesaver in so many ways. So let me share my screen. Sorry. All right.
All
So
good.
if Matt, yeah, there we go.
Sorry, I need you to share it one more time. I accidentally hit the wrong button.
Oh, darn it! All right. See, that's what happens with life with life
And that's what happens during
broadcasting.
the pilot episode.
Exactly. So I thought actually we were going to talk about like Superman and Batman, but you really want to do this cloud thing, right?
Let's do this cloud thing. Maybe we can do another show about Batman.
All right, let's get going. Um, ooh, that's not looking good. Let me try that again. I think I know what's going on. Let's try that again. I just added some light, and apparently the 50 hertz of the light is like making the screen flash. So that's way better. Yeah. So now, as a first unsung hero, let's talk a little about a hidden page that we have in both the portal and as a separate portal called resources.azure.com. Now, resources.azure.com is actually an API call to everything which is resource related in Azure. And the beauty of it all, it gives a good overview of everything which has been deployed inside of your subscriptions. You can do a lot more with these things. It can be a guide to help you write your own applications, do API calls immediately to the ARM API. So you have a lot of capabilities inside of this beautiful tool. Let me just walk you through it. So I have my subscription here, and if you go to resources.azure.com, the first thing that it does, it starts loading all the resource providers and all the subscriptions that you have access to. So just like in any other portal that we have. And then you can just start looking around inside of all the different ARM deployments that have been done, whether it's your subscription in different locations which are available to you. And as you can see, you have all the information on all the locations with even the longitude and the latitude. So this is really just the ARM calls that you're doing. But the beauty comes when you go inside of your resource groups. And now you can say, yeah, but I can do this to the visual portal too. Yeah, but this will help you to write API calls. This really gives you a get API call, but with the correct latest version that you have. You can do a get here, and you get all the resources of that all the resource groups in this different specific subscription. If you click through on these things, you can actually go a little bit deeper inside of your resource groups. And I go into a resource group here where I have MC service, and if I click on this one, normally I should be, it's not doing it.
And Mike, can I ask you a question here?
Yeah.
Because I'm seeing that the return of that API is a JSON object that looks familiar to our ARM templates. Is there a
Exactly.
relationship between ARM templates and the return of this API?
Yes, it is. This is actually the deployed ARM template that you have. So this is actually the same thing as you would see if you go into your resources inside of your Azure portal, and you go inside of your subscription, and there you have the resource provider inside of the environment, and I cannot see it for the moment. Or is it the Resource Explorer? Sorry. That's what you get when you're doing live demos. So it's actually the same thing. The only thing here, the difference with this one is that you only see here the deployed resources, but you cannot manage, you cannot handle it anything differently. It's just like displaying, and that's it. But you get a full deployed ARM template, and it gives you a good overview of everything which is as properties and attributes of that ARM deployment, so that way you can work along with it. Now I'm trying to, and I don't know why it's not loading correctly now. Here we go. I need to click on the provider. So I go into the providers directly into the compute, and from here out now I can say my virtual machines, because this is a virtual machine that I run to do some testing together with my son for Minecraft. You can see it's a virtual machine. Now, the beauty of it is if I click on the resource provider itself, I get the named instance of that virtual machine, and I can actually do some actions too. So I can not only do a get API call, but I can even put things against it. And this is very, very useful if you want to construct your API call directly, and you want to have a good idea of how these things are working, what the things that are needed as attributes that you need to pass along as parameters, and all these things inside of your resource. So from here out, I can say I want to start, and this would just be like doing a start VM or an AZ VM start when you're doing AZ CLI, or just by the portal clicking the start button. But this is actually the post command that you're going to get when you're doing a call. It's a little bit big. Let me make it a little bit smaller. So as you can see, it's a post. You have the full resource link here, and you say you get the start in the API version that you want to call immediately to that. So this will actually help you if you want to like write your own interface on top of the Azure portal to manage, let's say, for a select audience some services, and that you just want to kick them off, or even want to create stuff, because you can even create stuff with this. If you're using this portal, there's even a fail-safe. You can set it either by using read only or go to read, right? So no accidents can happen if you just keep it on read only. And let's say, for instance, that you want to create a new resource group, you can actually do that. So here I can say a resource group, and on the level on the resource group, I just can say go and create a new resource group. You fill out some of the blanks. So let's say Unsung Heroes. Of course, I need to know how to type, and I can give it the minimum properties that I need to fill out. So in this case, I need to have a location West Europe, for instance, where I'm mostly located, and I can just do a put, and this will just immediately do an ARM call, create that resource group, and in a couple of seconds, I can actually say this should be kicking off. Resource creation should be coming. Let's do that again.
No
Sometimes
worries.
there's some caching going on. Come on. should be here immediately. Yeah, here we are. So it just does a normal call as you would do, and you can. So this will help you develop your own software, your own little calls to the API, give you a better insight of what is deployed inside of your ARM template. And for me, in the past, it helped to write my dashboard created. I'm not using that anymore because now we have better support from the AZ CLI, but I used to have a PowerShell script that generated a dashboard for all the web apps that I created with customers. So that way I could have metrics there put up on and stuff. But they weren't well documented at that time, so you didn't know what the widgets were and stuff. If you have that resource located, and if you have that resources page, you can actually take a look on what kind of dashboards have been created, and what the kind of widgets that they are, and how you can actually like create them for you. And so that way I generated the JSON out of that. So yeah, so that's one of the first tips that I'm giving here as an unsung hero, because we use it every day, but people don't realize that they have such a powerful tool on the other side at their hands. So what do you have to share with us?
Yeah, so you shared the Resource Explorer with us, and another unsung hero that I use very frequently is the Azure Resource Graph. And
that's cool.
For those that have deployed, let's say, sizable environments on Azure, one of the things you might have run into is we have certain throttles on our APIs. And as you're doing more and more API calls against the Azure ARM API, you might get throttled at some point. And in my case, I write a lot of automation scripts to help my customers. But in a sizable environment, if you have to list all resources, you first have to list all of the resource groups, then all of the different resources in that resource group, and each of those list operations is an API call. And so the Azure Resource Graph is a dedicated API endpoint separate from our ARM API that allows you to run queries against your resources. And then it has two big benefits. The first benefit being it is not the ARM API, so any API call you do against the resource graph doesn't count against the ARM throttles. And the second benefit is this API supports our KQL or Kusto query language, enabling you to write some pretty sophisticated queries and get the exact result out of Azure that you want to see. And why don't I quickly share my screen and do the same thing you did, Mike, and show a little demo of this.
Those are the best, right? Demoing stuff.
Yes. And so just give me a holler when you see my screen. I think it came up now. And where I'm now is I'm in the Azure portal. I went to the Resource Graph Explorer, and that's where we are right now. And I have a couple of queries already in the oven. And to start off with the most simple query, just listing all of the resources in my subscription. And as you can see, the moment I execute this query, this typically shouldn't take too long. You can see all of my resources. You can see their name. You can see their type. You can see a whole lot of details about those resources, including any of or all tags that are linked to them. If I just browse to tags, here you go. You can see all of the tags on the resources. And if I would actually tag resources, you would see those pop up as well.
Yeah.
And let me now walk you through some more, let's say, involved queries. The first one being just a counting query, which can be, which is really easy in the resource graph, which I would say is a little bit harder using the regular ARM API. Like if you want to count, you have to list everything. Here it's just a single query.
Yeah. That's the beauty of KQL, right? It's very easy. I mean,
yes. KQL, for those of you who are not as familiar with KQL or Kusto, Kusto is a query language originally used for Azure Log Analytics that is now also used by Azure Data Explorer, by the Resource Graph, and there's a couple of other services that interact using the same query language. And maybe, Mike, this is an idea for our next Unsung hero. Who knows?
Oh, yeah, it could be. Good idea.
So quickly moving on, another thing that's possible with the resource graph and KQL is just filtering resources based on their tag, where you can just get a resource based on the certain value of a tag, which is pretty straightforward. And then the next thing I wanted to show you is the resource graph is not subscription specific. Like I'm now executing all of this against my own subscription, but I have access within Microsoft to a couple of other subscriptions as well. And the resource graph with a single query can actually query resources in multiple subscriptions. And if I were to show you this now against these two subscriptions here, I'm executing a query where I'm getting all the resources, where the type is of virtual machine. And then I'm quickly doing a count by subscription ID, just showing you that this query is executing across these two different subscriptions and showing you the count of virtual machine per subscription ID. And then a final thing I have here is a little bit more of an involved query where I'm taking all of my virtual machine skill sets, and then I'm using the project operator to just get the information that I need out of the resource graph. Compare this with a typical SQL query where you would do a get star from. KQL by default also gets all of the properties of the object. And by using the project operator, you can get just the information that you want. And you can also do small little transformations in this project operator. And as you can see, I'm taking the field skew, and I'm taking the capacity out of the skew, transforming that to an integer, and calling that the keyword capacity. And then using that keyword capacity to sort the results of this query. And if we were to quickly execute this,
you only have order. You have only order selected.
I executed the full query, and as you can see now, you can see all of my virtual machine skill sets, and they are indeed sorted by capacity in a descending manner. And so this is a really quick overview of the resource graph. And the next thing I want to show you with this is just executing queries. But you can execute those queries either in your own application, you can execute them in AZCLI or in Azure PowerShell to optimize your scripts. And I have a script that I use on a daily basis because I'm a little bit too lazy, and I frequently forget when I delete a virtual machine, the disks of that virtual machine don't automatically get deleted to prevent customers from incurring data loss by accident. What I have here is I have a small little Azure PowerShell script that I run from within Azure Automation, where I'm executing a query against the Azure Resource Graph. And what you see here in this query is I'm getting all of the disks, and I'm taking disks where the managed by, which signifies the actual virtual machine that is managing that disk, where that is null. I'm then executing that query. So I'm just doing disks equals search AZ graph with that query. And then once that is done, for each of the disks in the resulting object, I'm removing that resource. So really simple way of using the Azure Resource Graph in a script. And instead of doing for each resource group, list me all the disks, which is a lot of ARM calls, you just do a single query and you can then do what you got to do.
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
It is very neat indeed, and it's pretty cool. And final, go for it, Mike.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, final thing I wanted to show you is for those of you that are familiar with the Azure portal and have browsed through it, you know that in the Azure portal, you can also do some advanced filters and queries on your resources. For instance, if I would want to see all my, let's say, virtual machines and virtual machine skill sets, I could do this operation in the Azure portal, and this would then show me all the resources. And let's say, what's happening here in the backend is the Azure portal is actually using the resource graph to execute this query. And so if you were to click this open query button here in the all resources section, this will take you to that same resource graph explorer we were using earlier on, and will show you a pre-created query that's, as you can see, a machine generated query. But as you browse through this and go all the way to the bottom, you can actually see some of the logic that's happening in this query. And if we were to run this, you'll see the same result as you saw in the Azure portal, but now in the Resource Graph Explorer. And if you have a view that you created in the Azure portal and want to see the underlying query, you can just use this logic to get to that same view.
That's building without building. That's actually pretty neat because it will save you some time. You just click everything together, you have your query going, and then you just script that thing out. That's very useful. One of the cooler samples that I've seen so far is from the Azure Security Center team. They have a script that they're using by means of Azure Resource Graph to use that inside of Azure DevOps or Actions to check against scanned images that they're using in Azure Security Center. So you have your Docker images that you send up to your container registry, and you can actually use that result of the scanning inside of Azure DevOps to gate your push to the container registry. So you can actually use that bit with the Azure Graph, because Roam, which is the code name for Azure Security Center, actually uses Resource Graph a lot underneath to do all these queries. So that's pretty cool. There's pretty neat stuff in Resource Graph. It's really an unsung hero. And you can do so much more.
Yes, exactly. And I think just in wrapping up what we discussed today with the Resource Explorer that you showed, showing the, let's say, the JSON object on the Azure API, and Resource Graph, those, in my opinion, are two really nice unsung heroes for our pilot episodes, where we hope that our listeners and our viewers have gained some more information for building applications on Azure.
Yeah, and I hope people will stick with us for the next coming episodes, because we have some more stuff coming up. We're going to try this. We're going to see what it will do. But we feel it's necessary that we give attention to things that are really like hidden in plain sight and people actually don't use or don't know that they can use it. And there's so many more things that we can cover in this series. So let's hope we had some viewers here and see where we can go with this.
Yeah, and as a closing remark, this show doesn't just have to be the two of us. If any of our listeners have one of their own favorite unsung heroes, just ping us on Twitter, on LinkedIn, whatever channel you want to use to reach us, and we might have you on as a guest to show your unsung hero on the show.
Yep, that's a good idea. We love guests. We'll be even more interactive this way.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, Mike. Have a good one.
Thanks, Nils. Have a pleasant day. I'm shutting down for the rest of the evening.
I'm starting my day now.
All right. Have a pleasant day, man. Bye-bye.